Dents and scratches putting a dent in your day? Introducing Roger Steen Crash Repairs Adelaide, your trusted solution for automotive woes. With over 2 decades of expertise, Roger Steen Crash Repairs guarantees top-notch service, restoring your vehicle to its former glory in no time. From minor dings to major collisions, our skilled technicians handle it all with precision and care, using state-of-the-art equipment and techniques.
Roger Steen Crash Repairs saved my car. It looks brand new.
Fast, friendly and reliable. I wouldn't trust anyone else with my vehicle. Don't let accidents slow you down. Visit Roger Steen Crash Repairs Adelaide at 14 Penner Avenue, Glynde for quality service you can count on. And here's a special offer just for our listeners. Mention this podcast and receive a $100 discount on your repair. Roger Steen Crash Repairs Adelaide. Excellence in every repair.
Past players, past legends, past legends.
Tonight we're pleased and proud to have Stephen Rowe on. Of course, the 5AA personality now, but previously 27 games for South Fremantle, 85-86, 185 games, 206 goals for the mighty Redlegs, 87-97. Of course, Norwood Premiership player in 97, 29 games for Adelaide, 24 goals, 91-95. Illustrious painter, mark of the millennium in the 97 grand final. Welcome aboard, Rowe.
Oh, thanks, Malcolm.
Thanks for joining us, Rowe. Malcolm mentioned there that you started in South Fremantle. Now, obviously, us South Australians are very passionate about South Australian footy, and you sort of forget that you did start over in South Fremantle.
And also won the Jack Clark medal, which is the best player in the Waffle Colts in 1984.
Yeah, look, I was born in Adelaide. My mum's side of the family are all South Australian. We moved back to WA. Oh God, I was about 5 or 6. Lived in a little country town called Wagen. And a bit like here, you have zones. My zone was the Upper Great Southern, and I got recruited to South Fremantle. Now, in my little batch, there was Mark Bairstow, Nicky Winmar, the Collard brothers, myself, all the Materas were all from that Upper Great Southern region.
There's a bit of talent there, Rowe.
Oh, well, I was by far the worst of that bunch I just said, but, there's a fair bit of talent in that, no question.
Fair bit of pace competing against there too, Rowe, just quietly.
Well, we loved the sample growing up because we were indoctrinated.
You grew up in Elizabeth Street, didn't you, Rowe? Before,
we did. Yep. My mum was actually Beulah Road that backed onto Norwood Oval. She went to Norwood Primary and then Norwood High. I went to Norwood Kindy and then we went interstate. And we lived in Lotus Street, Paynham. So we're talking...
That's right, yeah.
Heartland Norwood.
Yeah.
Well, obviously red and blue was definitely in the blood from a very early age there. What colours are South Fremantle? Just remind me.
We were the Bulldogs. So if you imagine Port Adelaide, which is the harbour town of here and the most successful with the most flags, that was South Fremantle. Everyone hated us. We were south of the river. Our arch rivals was East Fremantle. My first captain was Stephen Michael. Look, I still think the greatest player that's ever played the game. I'm biased because I grew up worshipping him, and then he was my first captain at South. So I think when you're young, you have a hero worship of players more so than we actually play with them, I think. But
yeah, I did. I said to Pete before we were talking beforehand, before coming to air with you, and I said, Rowe's a big Stephen Michael fan, like I am Barry Robberin, and I knew you were Stephen Michael. Yeah, well and truly.
Can you tell?
Yeah.
Sorry.
If you look at his record, just purely look at his record, his Sandover medals, his Simpson medals, best on ground in carnivals.
Oh, he was a beautiful mover. He was a fantastic player. Yeah.
He rucked and he would hit it to himself, grab the ball like a rover, bounce it, fend off like Dusty Martin, kick goals.
Yeah, no,
when he changed, or if you say rested as a ruckman, he rested as the centre half forward. Now, you name another player that's done that. I remember my debut game. I swapped with Wally Matera. You'd remember that name?
Yes, yep.
Famous, went on to play for the West Coast Eagles.
Yep.
And I said to T.I., his nickname was T.I., didn't stand for Thursday Island, you know what it stood for.
Yep.
I said, T.I., where do you want me to stand, as the Rover did with the ruckman? And he said, well, don't stand there. And I said, yeah, but that's where you're hitting it. Yeah, don't stand there. And I realised why he meant don't stand there, because if he hit it there and you're in the way, he'd just take you out, the opponent out, and everyone in his way. God, he was. In actual fact, ask Michael Aish, if you do this podcast, who hit him the hardest and who was the best footballer he ever played against. And he'll say Stephen Michael.
Yeah. I will ask Aishi on that regard and all that. So,
obviously, your idol, and he's your captain first up. I mean, that's a pretty special thing as well.
Well, it was. You're goggly-eyed when you come to a league club, whether it's in the Waffle, the Sample, or back then the VFL, and to think you end up playing in a team that had, these names might not mean a lot to you, but Benny Vagona was as good a half-forward player.
He was pretty explosive. Yep.
Yeah, very explosive. Noel Carter was our centreman. He played for Richmond.
Good player. Yep.
Oh, look at his state record. Then there was the young blokes that came through. The Nicky Winmars. I said the Collard boys, all the Materas. John Worsfold came through with me. He played AFL. Yep. Scott Waters came through with me. He played AFL. Dean Irving came through with me. Played AFL. Alan Jakovich came through with me. Played AFL. The era of the 80s, when Mal Brown was there, he set that club up for decades.
Rowe, were you a chance to get picked up by West Coast?
Well, they came in 86.
Yeah.
Now, every year we came over to South Australia, and every year we'd go and watch Norwood if we were able to do it in the football season. So I'd always had in the back of my mind a dream to play for the Norwood Footy Club. My uncle, Barry Hughes, God bless him, he's no longer with us, was the accountant or the auditor for the Norwood Footy Club. Well, his company, Tilly Murphy Hughes, for 47 consecutive years.
Yes, yeah. Yep.
So that was my link to Norwood. He was, I'm not saying he was good mates with Wally, but the executive all knew him, the board all knew him.
Yep.
And that was my link through, what was the other accountant's name? Anyway, it'll come to me in a second. So what was the question? I've lost my train of thought.
No, just on chance of getting picked up by West Coast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when the West Coast formed, if you like, in 86, their first season was 87, they picked a squad. Now, the Rovers in my team were David Hart, who ended up playing in both their premierships as a back pocketer.
Yeah.
Wally Matera, the Dean Laidleys and all those sort of ones played for opposite teams. They had a breadth of talent for Rovers, so I missed that inaugural squad. And because I missed that inaugural squad, that was my out to go to Norwood.
Right.
And I took it with both hands.
And so Wally obviously got you to Norwood?
Yeah, well, sort of. So my brother and I went to see my uncle. He lived in Berry on a farm. And on the way back, he said, look, if you want to play at Norwood, the bloke you got to see is Wally Miller.
Yep.
He's in Wood Street, Norwood. This is his office. He drove us down. My brother and I walked in, knocked on the door. We said to the receptionist, can we see Wally Miller? And they said, well, have you got an appointment? We said, no. The door was open. Wally could hear. And the receptionist, I can't remember their name, said, so what do you got?
That would have been Gail back then, I reckon.
No, I don't think it was. I think she came a bit later.
Okay.
No, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I think she came a bit later. And we said, look, the West Coast to form. I'm a Rover. This is my brother. He's a back pocketer. We were born in Norwood. My grandma lived on that street there in that house. My mum went to that school. And that must have pricked Wally's ears up.
Yep.
He walks out and says, come on in, boys. Let's have a chat. So he asked me a couple of questions, asked Paul a couple of questions, and that was it. Took our names down. That was it. And we thought, nothing's going to become of that. We went obviously back to Fremantle. We rented a house together, my brother and I. I reckon it was no longer than maybe 7, 8, 9, 10 days after, unannounced, we get a knock on the door. It was about 8 o'clock at night, and it was Neil Baum.
Okay.
So Neil Baum's standing at our door. We knew who the hell he was.
Yes.
He didn't have any idea who we were. My brother answered the door. He said, "Stephen, Baumy's here." And I said, "Come on in." He said, No, I haven't got time to come in. I'm meeting a bloke by the name of Stephen Richardson. But which one are you, Stephen?
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, that's me." He then goes, "We'll have you, because Keith Thomas is going to Fitzroy. We need a midfielder, or not. Back then it was a rover, or an on-baller.
On-baller, yep.
But we're right for back pocketers." and my brother pipes straight up and says, "Barmy, no disrespect, but we're a package deal."
Good on him. I don't mind that. Yep, good on him.
Barmy starts to walk down the stairs. And I've kicked my brother and said, "What in God's name are you doing, mate?" He said, No, we're a package deal." I said, "Barmy, come back, you've got me." He out of the top of his pocket handed me a bit of A4 paper, Wally Miller type, with what my contract would be.
Right.
And I said, "Well, where do I sign?" 2 days later, I'm in a car driving to Norwood. And, well, what's that? 30-odd years ago.
Right, I've got to ask, what happened to Paul?
So he ended up getting sacked from Souths, going to East Perth, played another year, I reckon.
Right.
And then we've got a family business, so he ended up, running the family business with my family. The ship sailed for him, but it only was just starting for me.
Well,
wow.
Wally seems to be the architect of everybody that we've spoken to from Norwood.
I know that.
He has set up some fantastic deals, and that's another great story, isn't it?
Wally's,
Wally's
with
I say to Wally,
Cook,
I
he's
fell
the
at his
best
lap.
administrator.
It was a throw at the dartboard.
Yeah.
I'm a Nord man, tick. Passionate about the club, tick. He needed a midfielder. I mean, I'd played up to that point, whatever games I did. He would have done a reasonable amount of homework, ran a few people.
Certainly would have, yes.
He knew I was a competitive little bugger.
Yep.
And it fitted. So, yeah. But I had to, there were no promises. I was on no money. God, when I found out what other people were on, I mean, I played for nothing. And happy to, because I was just happy to play for the jumper.
And so you debuted for Norwood then against Port in 1987. What's your memories of that game, Rowe?
Do you know what, Malcolm? Don't ask me anything about games. I have no review mirror. I have no memory. I don't even know. I would not know. I honestly would know my first kick. You speak to a Rocket Maynard, he knows every kick, every possession.
Don't you think Rocket and I have done that over the years? Come on.
Yeah, and he had a photographic memory.
Yes.
I just don't. I can't. I didn't even. You know what? I didn't even know it was against Port there.
Yeah.
Well, I'll rephrase it slightly. Your first game was against Port Adelaide, knowing that it was the arch enemies. How did you feel about that?
Or had you been told that at that stage? Yeah.
Oh hell yeah, hell yeah. You get indoctrinated.
Yeah.
When I lived in Wood Street, Norwood, in the we didn't have Carmel Court then, but we had a poorer version of it. So my first 3 months I lived there. Then I got moved out with Craig Kelly. So there was Craig Kelly and I in a house, Flinders Street, Kent Town. When Nettie went to Collingwood, Macca moved in. So we ended up having this bit of a half house. But make no mistake, I didn't need to be indoctrinated with the hatred for Port when I probably watched the 84 grand final 20 times before I got to Norwood. So I knew what the rivalry was, make no mistake.
Yep.
Picked a good grand final to watch over and over again, that's for sure.
Yeah, I haven't watched it since this morning, actually.
You and me
actually.
both.
So, Rowe, then, at Norwood, you progressed. There was a little bit of frustration with lost prelim finals, that side of it, going through. 1990, you have a great year. You win the BNF. You make the Advertiser Team of the Year, and the Crows are born. What's your memories there then of 90?
Well, I remember the best and fairest night, and about 2 weeks before that, there was talk about a a combined South Australian team going into the AFL. Now, remember, I'd lived all of that roll back to 86 with the West Coast Eagles, and I was at South Fremantle. And I'll never forget it. Bob Hammond was moving around the room during the count and after the count. He spoke to Rocket Maynard. He spoke to Tom Warhurst. I think he must have spent half the night with Macca.
Yes, I could imagine
and I'm thinking to myself, when's Bob going to talk to me? Well, he didn't.
Right.
Anyway, and you're thinking, well, you know, I'm happy at Norwood.
Yeah.
If that ship sails. And to be brutally honest, I wasn't at the level. I had 5 years with the Crows. I just wasn't at the level. And I'm comfortable to say that. I'm glad I did it. In hindsight, might have been better if I just stayed at Norwood. And Wally Miller told me that every year. I had 1 year deals for 5 years. Yeah. Every year, I sat down with Wally and he said, mate, you're a Norwood man. You're a Sample man. You're a Norwood man. You're not AFL. Now, whether he can remember that or not, and I used to have, you know, great conversations with him. And to be honest with you, I probably should have listened to him. The only great thing with those 5 years with Norwood and the Crows is when I got dropped or not selected or emergency, and I was 68 times.
Yes.
That 5 years. I think I still hold the record.
Yeah.
Mate, if there was 4 on the bench, I'm a 100-game AFL player.
Yeah. That's actually not... I know you're mucking around saying that, but it's actually a fair bit of truth. Yeah. So,
but anyway, it doesn't matter. We only had 22.
Yep.
But when I got dropped, I couldn't get in my car quick enough to drive to Norwood Oval. So it wasn't a kick in the guts for me. It was I'm going back to Norwood. Now, if, and it's just a big if the setup was different and you got dropped and you had to play Sample Crows, that would mean diddly squat to me. So I'd be fiercely determined to stay in the ones team, if you like.
Yeah.
So getting dropped, they were actually doing me a favour.
Now, you had a couple of coaches over that period there. Who did you have, and some memorable moments with a few of those coaches?
Well, I went from Mal Brown, who was a genius before his time and should be on the AFL Commission, but that's another story. From him to Don Haddo, who was an absolute peanut coach, taught nothing, was one of the old school, my way or the highway, and ended up getting sacked the year after I left. So I go from not having a leader coach, a teaching coach, a coach that I respected, to Neil Baum. And it was like, I don't know,
chalk and cheese.
Clipping a fat girl and going out with Michelle Pfeiffer. Yeah. It was like, you go from a bald lolly to a chocolate. I just love Barmy.
Oh, his communication skills. That was the big thing. You know, you can argue tactically at times, maybe, you know, whatever, but his communication skills. And look, Rowe, while we're still on the subject of coaches, we've had Neil Craig on as a previous guest, and I've spoken to Craigie a fair bit as well when I interviewed him for my book and all that. He spoke glowingly of you. Now, let's also remember, bizarrely, Rocket Maynard sat on the bench under Craigie with Matty Robber in one game. He never did that to S. Rowe. So, Craigie, you got a massive tick from Craigie in terms of that in that regard too, right?
Well, I don't know. That's lovely to hear, but he knows how much I love that club and love that jumper and love playing for him. He knows that. Now, that's by actions. So I go from Barmy to Graham Corns and Neil Craig in the same year, 1991, and then from Craigie to Peter Rhodes, who's my premiership coach. So a real cross-section of coaches there. If you're talking the complete package, now you could debate the tactics.
Yeah.
If you're asking me to pick one, it's Neil Craig. He was the most complete coach.
Okay.
He improved me. He taught me. He inspired me. He drove me. He was brutal, and I mean brutal. But he was able, because he was clever enough, to pull the right triggers with the right players to get the best out of them. Now, I'm not saying Barmy didn't. There was a comfortability with Barmy.
Yeah.
Cornsey was different.
Yeah.
Craigie was the complete package. Now, I love Cornsey, don't get me wrong. Cornsey's record is unbelievable. and he was very much old school as well. But yeah, I would have loved to see Craigie win that one of those 05 or 06 flags with Norwood. There's one left on the shelf there. But
and I think also in terms of Craigie that let's forget he actually got Macca to probably listen and learn, and that's not the easiest thing to have done. So I think that's
I'll tell you a story. And a lot of people
tick.
a lot of people might not know this, and you don't like telling stories where you don't think it's in the public domain, and the others that are involved in this get embarrassed about it. But I'm sure Macca will vouch for this. So whenever there was a big decision to be made, they generally trotted out Bob Hammond. Now, Bob Hammond, club great, revered, but he was no part of the club at that stage, not even on a committee. So Bob Hammond gets rolled in. We're out in the gym. Every player's sitting down. Now, we've just lost our premiership coach that we adored in Neil Baum.
Yep.
That's a massive set of shoes to fill. Would you agree?
Oh, very much so.
Coach.
Yeah.
Yep. We loved him.
Yep.
We heard rumours and innuendos as who it would be. And if there's one thing Norwood's done well is pick good coaches. You have a look through the journey. I think post-Crows, there might be a couple there that you go, well, wowee, and I won't name them. But Bob Hammond stands up and goes, players, here's our coach for 1991, former Norwood player, blah, 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 Neil Craig. Well, there was a sigh, because I reckon if it wasn't the last game of the year, it was the second last game of the year. Craigie was playing in the centre for North Adelaide, and we hated him.
Yep.
I mean, we hated him. And Macca and he were fierce rivals, if you like, on the field. And we'd heard rumours that it might have been Craigie. Anyway, Macca goes to Wally, if he's our coach, or Bob, I can't remember who it was, well, then I'm done.
Yep.
And Wally, what it might have been Wally, and I hope my facts are right here. Well, Macca, if you're done, you're done. We pick coaches, you play.
Yep.
That's your call.
Yeah, that would have been Wally. Yep.
The greatest, I love him, player ever.
Yep.
So the first training session, and I was with Macca. He said, yeah. Are you allowed to swear on this podcast?
Yeah, absolutely, mate.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I thought we had to. Yeah, I'm with you, Macca. Fuck him. Little fucking squeaky voice, little prick. He can go get fucked. I'm not playing for him. I'm not going from Barmy to this bloody North Adelaide turncoat, Yep. What do you think?
Yeah,
you just got back in the Norwood after he left us. We're all of us. The senior guys are all down that path. First training, and this would have got back to Craigie. No question about that. This would have got back to Craigie. No question. First training session, and I was there. The first rule that Craigie said, fellas, we're going to be about discipline. We're going to be the most disciplined club. We're going to play the most attacking brand of football, and we're going to do it together for the jumper. So from now on the training track, not in the game, but on the training track, you have to pull your socks up. You have to tuck your jumper in. Now, why would a Craigie said that? You tell me.
Well, he's setting standards right from the get-go,
yeah,
isn't he?
but I reckon that's aimed at Macca. Yep, keep going.
Malcolm, spot on.
Yeah.
So our captain, our revered great, who didn't want him to coach, along with all of us, had to, on the training track, pull his socks up and tuck his jumper in. Macca played 370-odd games.
Yeah.
Jumper out, socks down. Did he not?
Yep, correct. Yeah.
So that was Craigie saying, hey, I'm the big hen in the hen house.
Yeah. Yep.
And he won Macca over blow by blow, game by game, session by session, win by win, loss by loss.
Oh, and not the easiest person to win over, too, as number 14.
Well, I don't know whether I've ever sat down with Macca on a fishing boat and talked about Craigie. I honestly haven't.
Yeah.
And I don't know where he places him, but what I do know about Macca, he rates premierships over anything.
Yeah.
So we couldn't in 5 years. We got to the grand final in 93 and got smoked, came from fifth. We thought we were going to be the history makers.
Yeah.
But met a good team, and, the rest is history.
Yeah, I will say though, I do remember Macca with his, where he admitted that Craigie taught him to be more disciplined and that, he wasn't helping anyone by when he got suspended. And I do think things did, that he got through to the great one. So yeah.
And
here's my assessment. Again, I haven't spoken to Macca about this. If Macca's Macca, his history's his history.
Yep.
Pre Neil Craig, so pre the Crows, he's a dual premiership player. He'd won a Magarey but was suspended.
Yep.
Played sensational footy, played all that state footy, played for Australia, and was revered. I reckon he played his best footy and he did a knee and all of that under Neil Craig.
Yeah, I reckon that's
I'll
fair.
debate that with I'll debate that with Macca, and he'll probably end up hearing this podcast. If he had if Macca had a Neil Craig type coach earlier, oh my God.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah.
And Craigie almost mentioned that himself in his interview with us.
Yeah.
That there was that when he was appointed coach, he was a bit apprehensive initially, but then no, let's get down to the job at hand. So
he admitted he was very nervous.
Yeah.
To start with, walking into Norwood.
Well, he probably would have heard that.
Yeah.
Well, you got to
Exactly.
remember, we were bashing heads against each other.
Yeah.
Not 2 months earlier.
Yeah. And we know how well Gary takes anyone leaving Norwood too, and that sort of thing. And yeah, so look, full hats off to Craigie. And look, under Barmy, I think was a brilliant club coach as well. And I'm talking all of us as supporters in that way. You think the old days, the Red Leagues club, then you're with us, and it's not the franchise sort of thing nowadays. It was a real club.
But the modern day version of that is probably what Nathan Bassett brought back to Norwood a few years ago, really, when you think about it.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair, but I it's a little bit different. You think the crazy things we did as supporters and all that back then, like Rowe, you and I walking out of the Marrickville one night and we see the esky on someone's tennis court, so we climb the fence and drink on their tennis court for 2 hours. Now,
hang on. There's a story there. We've got to hear about this one, mate. Come on.
Rowe and I might have had a couple that night. And,
couple of West Ends.
Yeah, and it was quite a warm night. And
Look,
we just thought this person on the tennis court that their esky needed, that there was too much in it, and Rowe and I thought we'd do the right thing. A couple of hours later, we had done the right thing.
Yeah. I think we all have poor memories, and we're all romantic at heart.
Yes.
Those first 4 years pre-Crows at Norwood were the best 4 years of my life.
Yeah.
And there's no shade of grey about that. I had a home. That home was the Red Leagues Club.
Yeah.
And after every game, we went back there. It was the heart and soul of the club. We played together. We stayed together. We'd go to the Kent Town Hotel Thursday nights.
Yep.
We had rules about going from there to the Norwood Club after that. They were the best years.
Yeah.
And you can't emulate that.
I do want to bring up one thing about that. There was a lady with various disabilities, and to say Rowe was her favourite player is a massive understatement. And Rowe used to put her in a taxi in the Red Leagues Club virtually every week, would help her out of the wheelchair, carry her in and all that. And that was a ritual for you, Rowe. That was never, every week and all that. And that's what it was. We were a huge family. And some of the things, we all did, but it was the players with supporters, and you had your mates amongst the players, and we're all part of it. Where nowadays it's more it's a business. It's completely different. You've been through it with Jimmy, and in terms of that regard, we'll get to that. But let's keep kicking on, Rowe. In terms of, you did have some games though with Adelaide. You had 30 disposals against Essendon in your second game, but you didn't have much luck. And then you did your knee, and probably lost that little bit of pace which you desperately needed.
And momentum, yeah.
And that. So you didn't have much luck either there in that regard, Rowie.
Look, I don't look at it like that, to be honest. We had a talented team at the Crows, you could always see those young ones taking over. You know, we had McLeod and Edwards and, Ben Hart, Mark Rasciuto, Sean Wren. They were the ones that were always going to end up winning the flag.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say I was unlucky. I was a rover. That was the only position I could play. Played it all the way through my juniors to South and at Norwood. I could go forward and maybe sneak a goal. I wasn't a goal sneak, if I was in front, I'd kick it. But I was a rover. I loved the art of reading a ruckman's hand, getting it and then handballing it out to someone quicker and off they go. Now, I was up against a bloke by the name of Tony McGuinness, superstar. The other rover was Daryl Hart, superstar.
Very good.
So, if you have a look at that team, I'm not in front of any of them.
No, that's
true. I was probably lucky to get what I got. And I eked out 5 years there because I was probably the lowest paid. I was low maintenance. Yeah. Corns used to always say, Rowe, when I played you, you never let us down.
Yeah.
But he'd always drop me. Now, I would too. I've been the chairman of selectors in the state team for 15 years. I know what selection process is. I know what roles are, and I know what tough decisions are to be.
I'll get to that.
If Tony McGuinness is fit, Rowe doesn't play.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, although roving to someone like Sean Wren would be pretty handy at most clubs.
Yeah, we loved each other. I just came back from Byron Bay. He had a shindig up there, and we used to joke about he would much rather hit it to me. There was a game, I reckon it was St Kilda at Moorabbin. I'm on the bench on the far wing. The ball up was in the back pocket, and Freddie McGuinness was calling for it, and Rennie hit it to me.
Yeah, I can understand why he would have rather had you as well, though, Rowe. Yeah, we'll move on from there. So let's go to one of the great days, the absolute cliffhanger, the 97 grand final where we absolutely shitted in. The mark, Rowe, higher than Joe Cocker. Geez, you played up on that, didn't you? And that was because you did get at least a couple inches off the ground. But geez, what a great memory that is, Rowe.
Well, I get embarrassed when that comes up because people that tell the story, you expect it to be a, Jesselenko, you little beauty. Yeah. I was as high as a Coke can.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, is the modern day version of that Rory Sloane's from last year over Boakey?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Nearly identical.
Yeah, very similar. Yeah. But the look on your face was superb, bro. Yeah. I reckon that was a big part of it. And, we'd won by that stage, so it was,
party time.
Yeah, it was. And it was great to be well in front of you in a grand final against Port Adelaide. So.
Well, there was a lot of emotions going through me that day because I always knew if I won a flag, I'd finish.
We thank Stephen Rowe there for part one of his interview, and we know Rowe's a passionate South Australian and loves the Norwood Footy Club, and just really good to see that him open up a little bit about his time over in Perth and a few things along that line.
Passionate is the word for Rowe, not backward in coming forward. Yes.
It was a great. I mean, I would have loved to have played the whole interview, but that would have taken us past the 2 hour mark as far as our podcast go. But he certainly gave us some gold along the way, and part one was good, but part two maybe just that little bit better. So we're just teasing that one there as we go along.